Welcome to the Dr. Leadership Show, where we take a look at how you approach your work and personal life and how we can make the most out of both of them. A weekly get-together where we get real about self-improvement and development as we all make this not-so-easy journey through life. Our discussions will cover ideas and concepts from how to grow your career to how to lead your family towards prosperity and happiness. We don't pretend to know it all, and the doctor is the first to be vulnerable, discussing his own weaknesses, both past and present. This is about growing together and having some fun while we discuss what is happening in the crazy world we live in and how to make the most of it. Let's strive for awesome together. Let's get after it. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Dr. Leadership Podcast. Hope you're having an awesome day. Fall is here, beautiful weather here in the Midwest this weekend. Hope you're having a great weekend. Want to remind everybody, hey, check out the website. Loaded up some unbelievable interviews on the Leadership Lounge. Just loaded up Toby Stansel, CEO of the Cargo Agency, famous author, also a great motivational speaker, great Southern man from down in Greenville, South Carolina. Spends an hour with us. Go and check that out. It's out on the website. Subscribe, check it out on the Patreon site. Also, just opened up to the public my interview with DJ Blyseth, a college football Hall of Famer at Tennessee Tech, played defensive end, went into the NFL short stint with the Raiders, and then moved over and transferred his skills to the Arena League and won a championship, the Arena Bowl there for the Chicago team. And he talks about how he transitioned all those lessons and everything he was great at and what inspired him over to his business career today. Made that available to everybody. Check it out. And then, of course, Brian Smith's out there, the founder and CEO of iWatch Security, as well as the 5 Things podcast host and editor. Great conversation with him as well. So please check those out. Going into episode 59 today, it's going to be a 2-part series. And I'm continuing on from the conversation, well, not continuing on, tying into the episode around being a good storyteller. And episode 59 is part 1 of how to be a killer presenter. And it's an important topic for a lot of things in life. At some point in life, you're going to have to be uncomfortable being comfortable in front of a crowd. But today I want to continue on down that episode a couple of weeks ago around be a good storyteller. Remember, there's several different types of stories that are critical to be able to be told, including things like trust stories where you can build trust with those around you, lesson stories where you kind of paint a picture and a big lesson comes out at the end. The show today is going to take this a little further and dive into that world's biggest fear, which is public speaking, right? Mine's more spiders. I'm not a big I'm arachnophobic. Ooh. I did have a snake on the back patio last weekend too, a baby snake that I did grab by the tail as it tried to go down in between my concrete house and pulled it out and smacked it against a pole. Woo, that'll get you woke up in the morning. But a lot of people's biggest fears is public speaking. And so we want to move on how to give a killer presentation. Now, to me, as I said, public speaking is not that big a deal to me. I public speak for a living. I do it a lot. My teams do it a lot. I had to learn to be comfortable speaking in public too, just like everybody else had to. Now, I still get nervous. This isn't about, to overcome public speaking is not about not being nervous. The butterflies are great. It's not about becoming a robot and losing those butterflies. Butterflies are a good thing. It makes you drive for excellence. It makes you turn on. It makes you human, right? Believe it or not, the doctor is human. But being a good presenter does require a lot of skills and steps. And over the next couple episodes, I want to break it down a little bit for you. Because I think if you have a few key concepts, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape on this thing. Or not concepts, but a few key steps that you take. First of all, let's talk about what even makes a good presentation. Most presentations are somewhere between a report and a story, right? Somewhere in between there. Doesn't matter what you do. And you need to get that balance right. Now, as an individual contributor, as a sales leader, someone that is, trying to get people to commit to things for you, for your living, for your company, you're typically, let's say you're presenting that proposal as the salesperson. You need to have the data for the purchase decision to be made financially, but the most important piece of that presentation for that situation is you got to get the emotional story part right. That brings the person to the conclusion that they have to go with you. They have to buy what you're selling. It's the only way. It's the only way to fix it. That's what your goal is in a great presentation, is to have enough data. When you're an individual contributor, a seller, you got to have the data. You got to have the proof sources. The data helps tell the story, but you got to click the emotional button. You have got to draw out desire to participate. Remember, if your presentation is too report or data heavy, you'll lose that audience. And this is where I think a lot of people blow it on being a good presenter, is they go too deep in the data. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But this goes back to being that great storyteller, right? You have to be able to entertain, you have to be able to hold engagement, you have to be able to deliver the message, the boom, the win, right? You have to be able to bring that awesome feeling to the audience that this is the only guy or gal I want to do business with. These people are awesome. That's what you're trying to get. That's the winning message. Now let's talk about, for a second, what if it isn't a selling presentation, but an internal review or a budget or business plan or the boring stuff. But you're presenting to your superiors. Then the story part of the presentation kind of steps back a bit more. The bosses need to understand you know your stuff, right? And that typically comes from understanding and showing you understand the data. And then why grow their confidence in you? You have to get them to feel very, very confident that you're the one that's going to deliver what you're saying needs to be delivered. Whatever the challenge is, you have to convince them that you're going in the right direction. You have to convince them that the way you're tacking the ship is in the right direction. All those things come to bear. So if you're doing an internal review, the data part of that does become a little bit bigger. So balance is killer. This confidence is what allows you to gain agreement on what you're asking for in those data presentations, right? You're trying to you show the data, you show you understand the data, you have to tell the story on what the data means. You still have to have the capability to tell a story on an internal review or report or going over some data that is garnering results. And you have to be able to build confidence that you understand that data and what the data is showing. So you still have to have story in there, but you better have a concept of understanding of what the data is actually saying, most importantly. Now, a selling and a financial or a business plan presentation, they do need to be approached the same. And how do I want to say this? It's all an important aspect. The decision-making is around the story, the decision-making is around the data, but you have to know your audience each and every time. So a selling or financial or business plan presentation, you got to approach them the same in the one important aspect. And that important aspect is know the audience. If it's bean counters that you're presenting to, let's say it's a selling proposal to the CFO or to someone that controls the budget, you're going to have to be data-led there. They are by background and by their personality typically not the most emotional people. They are there to keep the purse strings tight. So the storytelling has to be more around the data and how that data is leading to a good financial outcome, an ROI, whatever might be the case for those bean counter type, financially focused type of decision makers that you're giving it to. If it's sales leaders, show the growth. Show the win. Now I'm talking about inside of like an inner office or an intercompany presentation. Growth is king right now. I'm putting together annual plans for next year. 5.5 months away. Yes, in big corporate worlds, this is how it happens. just got done launching this year's plan, start working on next year's. Don't even know what's broke yet, but we got to figure it out because we're going to have to grow another, we're going to grow 20% this year, and they're going to ask for another 15 to 20% next year. It's just how the world works, man. More with less. Welcome to the big leagues. So you have to be able to show growth when you're presenting to sales leaders. Now, that's a financial presentation. That's a sales presentation, proposal presentation. What about product presentations? The balance need to be across specs, across value. It's great if it's faster. It's great if it's more productive. It's great if it's better quality, whatever you're selling. The prettier, etc. But what does it mean for the prospect? Now, this is probably the most important type of presentation for a seller, especially if it's a tangible item. You have to show the value of what you're delivering to the company. By changing to this new widget, it means A, B, C, and D, which leads to E, which means you were praised inside your organization, Mrs. Prospect, and you will be given the next role that you're looking to get. That's basically the picture you're trying to paint here. All of the stuff, we used to call them we used to have what are called FAB statements. This goes way back. This is the early 90s. And FAB was an acronym that stood for Feature, Advantage, Benefit. And the B was the most important part of that entire acronym. Here's the new feature. Here's the new thing that it does. Here's the advantage it gives to the user. And the ultimate benefit is this. I mean, you can do it on cars, right? I mean, the safety belt. The feature is we now have an across your chest and across your belly safety belt. The advantage is it's really easy to put on right when you get in the car, and it makes a safety enhancement to you. The benefit is you get in car accidents. Car accidents happen, and we lower the risk of you dying by 95%. That's a pretty big benefit. So you gave the feature, new safety belt. The advantage, easy to put on. It gives you a feeling of safety. It's not an adherent. It's not a problem to do. It doesn't give you a lacking in some other area. And the benefit is you don't die. Great feature, advantage, benefit statement there. So in product presentations, try not to focus on the what it does, but the benefit and the value that it brings to the people that it does it for. On part 2 of this topic, next week's episode, I'll get into the how you present, not the what, right? How to stand, how to face, how to engage, etc. This is critical, but first let's talk about the prep for a presentation, okay? So I've talked about some of the different types. You got more report-based, you got more emotional-based, you got value-based. Depending on what you do when you're living, where you're going to present, those are basically the different types of presentations you're going to run across. But how do you prepare for it? The first step is, I think, you got to kind of frame it. You got to frame the presentation or story. This is the most critical step. It's conceptualizing and setting up this presentation. Almost like when you start to write someone writes a book or a paper, you kind of draw out an outline. Give yourselves a 4 or 5 step what you're trying to bring as the boom here. And I think something that is always critical, and why I said it ties into the episode a couple weeks ago around Be a Good Storyteller, humans love stories and metaphors. And they're in large numbers of good presentations have good stories in them. I mean, I think back in all the presentations I've been through in my life, if someone was charismatic and had a good tie-in with a story and felt, personalized the thing that they were talking about, I enjoyed that presentation. They got a better reaction out of me than if they didn't do it that way. I always say, take the audience on a journey with you. The goal here is for you to cause people to see things differently after you present. You want them to come in, well, you don't want them to come in with not agreeing with you, but you want them to come in with their thoughts are in their mind, and they've been thinking that way for a long, long time. You give your 20-minute presentation, hour presentation, 2-hour presentation. I've given 2-hour presentations. If you give that to them at the end, what you want is people in the lobby afterwards going, I'd never thought about it like that. Wow, what an insightful view. Holy cow, this causes me to think completely different about said subject. That's what you're looking for. So you have to put parameters around it. You got to set the presentation up in your own mind. You have got to frame what you're going to talk about, right? You got to be able to see the journey you're taking them on. You have to pick a starting point and a finishing point. Understand what the audience already knows about your subject, and don't be too remedial. So if you're an accountant and you're presenting something on new accounting rules, you don't start with in, the year 1865, whatever it is, that's an arbitrary date, we invented the, annual taxation code. Everybody in the audience probably knows that. So you don't want to start there. You want to start about in the spot that you are today. Here's the current situation that we're trying to resolve for. Understand what the audience already knows about the subject, and don't be too basic there. Also avoid, this is a big one to me, and I see people fail on this all the time. So write this one down. Don't use your own jargon. Don't use acronyms that only you know. You lose people here. I'll sit in presentations. So my company is a large company. I interact with other sales divisions on large presentations. I got a big one. I got to fly out on a week from today for a big presentation out in New Jersey. And there's going to be 4 or 5 different divisions there. And I hope to goodness that they don't start dropping acronyms that are only internal to us. It's just a very, very poor situation to put yourself in because the customer doesn't know what in the hell you're talking about. You're stopping from moving the ball because they're pausing going, I wonder what the hell that meant, instead of listening to what you're saying. So avoid your own jargon at all risk. Be very, very clear on what you're talking about in layman's terms. So when you start this process, good presenters introduce the topic quickly. They get to the point. Here's our current state. And then you lay out a desired state. This is what we're going to discuss and where I'm going to take you. It's the problem and the solution. And then start the convincing part. We're here today to talk about subject A, which has been lagging on our sales department for the last several years. And the journey I'm going to take you on today are a couple of key attributes that we want to enhance in our go-to-market strategies that we feel is going to get us over the hump of those headwinds that we faced for years prior to today. Now let's go on a journey here and let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm just ad hoc in that thing right here, but I gave what the current state is. I gave what the journey is going to be about, what we're trying to solve for, what good's going to look like. Now let me take you down the road here. All right. One big mistake is always too much data. So be careful of this, right? People get insecure people will load presentations with way too many slides, way too much data, way too much on each slide because they want to show that they know what they're talking about, right? See all the cool stuff I was able to look up and put on a sheet of paper or on dozens of sheets of paper? I mean, I've seen presentations that have 60 slides and 10 of them were needed. It's a big, big miss to over-inundate. Couple things happen. You're either going to have to cover the data way too quick to get through it, or you aren't going to get through it. And if you don't get to the end of the story, which is the last slide of the presentation or last couple slides, you've failed. So you got to be good at time management. You got to understand what your timing is. You got to understand what the audience is. You got to frame it up. You got to give the problem. You got to talk about what the solution is going to be. You got to show the solution, and then boom, the close, right? Only 10 slides are needed. The number of slides doesn't determine if you are knowledgeable or not. Too much data often shows insecurity, like I said. Don't be that guy. Don't be that gal. Each slide needs to be clear, concise, and on the point you're trying to make. Go deep, but not on every possible point, right? You don't need 20 lines of information to go deep into a slide. You can give a thought provoker and then take them on a journey on that slide, right? The slides need to be engaging, but legible. Here's a big one too. Know the size of the room and adjust the font size accordingly. Make sure the colors are right. And I'm going to tell you about a story here. And make sure your animations work. So my company, we spent a bunch of time and I'm sure a bunch of money coming up with kind of our new template for our presentations, PowerPoints, etc. And these people did a great job. It's beautiful. The only problem is you can't use it in presentations and it's too big to email. Besides that, it was great. I was at our customer council meeting in March, and it was the first time we had marketing actually in the room with us. And we had a big U-shaped table. The room was probably 50 feet deep. We were probably in the first 35 or 40 feet of it. Big screen, projector systems working. We're about the fourth slide in, and lots of great colors, and they concentrated on the palette, and you got to use this font when you present in it. They sent out instructions on how to use the template. Well, I'll tell you, if you're having to send instructions out on how to use the template, maybe the template's a little too complicated. I don't know, just me. So anyway, a couple of the marketing people that are helping lead this customer council meeting are in the back, and they're talking. You can see they're kind of concerned. So I get up, I go walking back, I go, what's going on? They go, you can't see the content. The color kind of overshadows the text, and it's too small. And I go, bingo. It's what people have been saying for the last 2 months since you've launched this thing. And by the way, if you haven't checked yet, you can't email it internally or to a customer a presentation. Somehow a 10-pager blows up to like 60 megs. You've got the layers set up wrong or something. And we paid a firm, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this thing. It just shows that don't get so wrapped up in what the slide is, but what's on the slide. Make sure it's legible. Make sure the font can be read from the backside of a room. If you're going into an auditorium, the screen isn't always the size of the Megatron at the Rose Bowl. So you have to understand the space that you're in. You have to understand the distance the people are from the presentation. You have to understand how the font color on the background color interact. Is the room well lit? Is the room dark? You need to understand these things. If you're trying to develop a template for common use, make the template easy to use. The color content is fine. If you want to come with a new brand, because it was all about our new branding, right? I appreciate it. It's important. But they miss the important little stuff. So don't miss the little stuff. You got to be clear and concise, and the slides have to be able to be read. Build it like a detective story. I was sitting here and I'm going, how can I kind of give a better rendition here? Lay out the problem, searching for the culprit. Here's the crime that's going on. That's the problem, right? Then you go on the journey. If you're old enough to remember Columbo or any of the detective stories, not the Pink Panther. Anybody older will understand that. That was always a disaster, but he always got his man by accident. Rather be lucky than good. But here's the crime, the problem. Here's the story and the journey, investigative work that we've done. And at the end, you're able to hand the attorney general. Here's the close. The jury's going to find him guilty or her guilty of the crime. That finish, that ending is the value that you're bringing to whoever you're presenting to, be it a report, be it a presentation for selling something, whatever it might be, so that the only decision they can make is in your favor. So look at it that way. It's the problem, it's the search for the solution, and then that aha moment. Oh my God, he's right. That's what you're looking for. So you have to build it that way. Be cognizant of how you're building it to make sure that it comes across that way. Presentations, this isn't hard. You just have to pause and think about the journey. When you're going on vacation, you're driving across the country, you plan your stops. You plan your route. You plan your meals. You plan your hotel, and you plan what you're doing at the destination. Same thing here. Anybody can plan a 2-day driving trip. You can effectively put together a presentation plan. Don't be intimidated by it. This takes trial and error. Your first one's not going to be your best one. Your 100th one's not going to be your best one. Then what happens is the content changes. But what you have to get is comfortable in putting together the outline, the slide deck, the presentation itself that allows your personality to deliver appropriately to the audience of the day and get the result you want. That comes through experience, that comes through repetitiveness, that comes through practice, that comes through knowledge, and that comes through confidence. You have to continue to do it over and over again, and you will build confidence. The other thing to make sure, and I kind of touched on it already, but plan the multimedia needed. Make sure, do you have sound? Do you need speakers? Do you have a video in it? If you're going to put videos and things in there, test them. Have somebody do a dry run with you, test it across line. We do lots of things virtually now. Bandwidth matters. If you have your video on while you're trying to if you have your camera on, of you while you're trying to video it. Cameras are on in presentations, absolutely. People can see your passion, can read into you. Don't just sit with they don't see anybody presenting. It's just a recording coming across that way. Don't do it. So plan your multimedia. Make sure you have the cables, the screen right, your mic, handouts, etc. Be prepared. And as I've said already, practice. Run it through your mind over and over again. Now, don't get so wrapped up that you get locked up, but be comfortable with the content. And I'm going to tell you why that's important in part 2 when how to give the presentation. You got to be comfortable so you aren't looking at the screen, so you aren't reading from your hands. No. Nervousness will cause that. It's okay to show a little nervousness. People understand that. They actually appreciate that. But we'll talk more in detail next week on that. Then the most important thing, have some fun. Again, we're going to explain the how to present next week, but have some fun. You've been asked to present something because people think you are pretty good at whatever you're going to present. You got the job somehow, if it's an internal deal. If you're getting to the presentation piece on a customer engagement or prospect engagement, they like you enough to let you come in and present to the group. So your confidence needs to be high enough. Trust in yourselves. Be prepared. It's like anything else in life. Be prepared. Because you're awesome. The presentation's going to be awesome. So keep that shit up. Talk next week.